Well, it's my turn. You always sit on
Don't fight over me, girls.
You know, I was born in pressure. Well, they call it Iran now.
Moddy, it scares me.
All I want to do is go for 2 weeks with you and Martha and visit my family.
In 1984, Betty Mahmoody's husband took her and her daughter to Iran to meet his family.
This all changed.
He swore they would be safe.
I know it's a different culture. I just don't understand it.
He swore they would be happy. He swore they'd be coming home soon.
Sweetheart, you haven't packed anything. You want me to do it for you?
He lied.
I don't know how to say this to you. We're not going back. We're staying here. I want us to live in Iran.
Are you crazy? We're Americans. Your daughter's an American.
I know it's the right decision if you just give it a chance.
No, you won't stay here. You can't.
You listen to me. You're in my country now. You're my wife. You do as I say. You understand me?
If you marry an Iranian man, you automatically become an Iranian citizen.
I told you before, you don't touch the phone, you don't leave the house.
The laws regarding women are very strict.
It is your duty to tell your husband everything. You cannot have secrets.
You have no rights to the children.
I'll help you.
If you're trying to escape with your daughter, they could execute you.
There are 3 principal ways out of it.
I promise you I won't leave you.
You'll never see my love again. You understand me?
Dear Lord, hear our prayer. Please help us leave Iran and get back to America. Please let nothing separate us. And keep us always safe in your care.
We must go now. Metro Goldwyn Mayer proudly presents Academy Award winner Sally Field in the terrifying true story of a mother and her daughter whose only crime was being American.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Venting with Us. We are going to talk about Not Without My Daughter, the little clip that you just saw with Sally Fields. Great, absolute movie. I know that we were going to go into talking about my mom and you know, discussing this of her passing today. It just was a lot for me today when I woke up, and I'm not in 100% in a space where I'm ready to kind of, like, a lot of things are happening right now where the comfort is not there. It's just, you know, I'm still trying to grieve and be able to not have a meltdown on camera. Even though my mom had a, you know, she always said, she's like, you know what, just be yourself, you know, just tell your story. Don't worry about others, you know, let them see you for who you are. And I just don't feel like I'm there yet. So I opted to give myself another week so that way I can kind of just take it all in, really think about what I want to say, how I want to say it, what I want to, you know, share and, you know, express to you a lot of things that have been happening. Because the one thing that I wanted with this show was to be more open, give myself a little bit more freedom, so that way you guys can have that comfort with me. So I think on next week's show, I'll be not fully ready, but somewhat ready. And maybe this will help me therapeutically be able to get a lot of the, I don't know exactly how to say it. The sadness, I guess you would say, the grief, off my chest. Maybe I can help somebody, people could relate to it. I don't know. I'm in such a weird space because one part of me wants to kind of like keep pushing and keep going. And my mom always said, she's like, you got to keep going, no matter what. Do something that's going to distract you, even though it's not going to feel comfortable. But it feels weird to try and distract myself because I don't feel like that it's right, if that makes sense. But I know I always respect people that, and I always have said this, people grieve in different ways, and you got to respect how they grieve. But I don't know. I don't know. um, so we'll deep dive more into it next week. And talk about it. But oh no, I just realized I don't even have my Red Bull. This makes me so sad because I've been drinking it and I know that it's in the other room. Okay. Anyways, so we're gonna jump into this story, Not Without My Daughter. As you guys saw the trailer, and I hope that kind of gave you guys a little bit of like, oh my god, this looks like it's gonna be a great movie. This movie actually is out. You can watch it on either Prime or Tubi, and there's like 5 other ways that you can watch this movie with Sally Fields. This is actually based on a true story. And I was kind of excited to talk about this. Because it's one of my ultimate, I think that's the word. Favorite movies. I am a huge Sally Fields fan. I love her to death. My dream has always been to work with her. And I don't know if I've ever told you guys, I have like a list of actors and actresses. Some of them are no longer with us, so I've lost that opportunity. But I have a list of actors and actresses that I've always dreamt of working with. So maybe there's still time, right? But this is a true story about Moddy Mahmoody. Oh my God. There has to always be like some type of word that I can't get it. So this movie is about Moddy Mahmoody. That's why it's a tongue twister. Moddy Mahmoody, who was an Iranian anesthesiologist who was famously known for keeping his American wife Betty and his daughter Mata in Iran for 18 whole months in the mid 80s. He was not only trained in the UK and in the United States for over 20 years, but he somehow convinced his wife to go to Iran for a vacation, a 2-week vacation that would turn into the biggest nightmare of her life. Now, I watch a lot of 90 Day Fiance, Love is Blind, all of these dating shows, which I'm sure that some of you out there are big fans of. And, I always say, look, your person is your person, no matter where they come from, right? But then there's that tipping scale of you always got to remember that when you date somebody that is in another country, they have their own rules, they have their own, especially if they're like Iranian, if what is the other one? Like even like in Australia, they have their own. Europe, they have their own, like British, German, Spanish. It could be Spanish too. Every culture has their way of what is their view on marriage, right? And I always have said to people, it's okay to, date whoever it is you want. Just remember, are you ready to deep dive into their culture and accept it? It always makes me upset when I watch like 90 Day Fiance, which I'm obsessed with. Because some of these women go to other locations, like there's one couple where she left, I forgot what state she's from in the US. to go to India to go be with her now husband. And she doesn't like the fact that, in their culture, it's a whole family. They have to live together. She has to do things. Now she's a much older woman, but um she doesn't like it. And I always say, I'm like, but this is what you signed up for. You knew, I'm sure that there was conversations about what his religion was, how his family was going to act, whether, again, if it's Indian, if it's British, if it's whatever it is, you knew what it was going to be. It's kind of like, you know, you marrying into royalty. I'm sure that, they had Prince Charles has rules and regulations of what he can do and what he can't do. I'm just probably a bad example, but I'm just saying, so you kind of know what's going to happen. Now, I've seen the real documentary on Betty Mahmoody, and she explains, Moddy Mahmoody wasn't like this in the US. He wasn't an abusive man. They had a great marriage. They never argued. They met each other while they were working in a hospital. And they just had a life that people were so jealous of because it was kind of like a prince and a princess living there happily ever after, is how I can explain it. And the one thing with women, and we all have it, is that we know when something's not right. We get that little, and that just that feeling, that emotional feeling inside our stomachs where we're like, it just doesn't go right. Like something is not right, or something is going to happen. There's always a sign. And one day, Moddy Mahmoody convinced his wife, Betty, to move to Iran. Now, in Iran, the laws are very, very different, especially when it comes to women. Women's rights around that time were being stripped away. It was a very male dominated time. And I'm not sure if, much has changed, but from what I have read and what I've known, somewhat of the rules still apply. For instances, in Iran, the key marriage rules in Iran are that women at the age of 13 are already being led into marriage, whereas the boys it's at the age of 15. They can get married younger if the parents decide, okay, this is okay. That is a very normal thing. Whereas to us here in the US, we're like, what? First of all, I'm 13 years old. I don't think so, but over there, it is very, very legal to get married at that age. They're already, remember, in Iran, these weddings are already in motion. They're already set up that you're going to marry this person and this is the way it's going to be. And they do this for their whole entire family. They're arranged marriages. This is a very common thing in Iran. The other thing is men are permitted to have up to 4 wives. Men don't get excited. But they legally, they can have up to 4 wives. I don't know if I could definitely be an Iranian woman, because I would feel jealous that, first of all, no, 4 women, no. You're gonna somewhat have a tough time, but this is this is a normal thing, and they would have to go to like premarital counseling for all of this. So it's crazy, but these are the rules. When you go to Iran also, and if you're an American, you automatically become an Iranian woman. You're not no longer you don't have legal, you're not a United States citizen, is what I want to say. I apologize. I know that was probably a struggle, like, so it kind of flips, which is why a lot of women during that time, I have to, specify that during that time, a lot of women did not want to travel outside the United States, especially going into these type of countries, because there was a lot of things that could happen. You never knew. The fathers have the full control over the kids. So they can literally say to their wives, you know what? Why don't you go back to the United States, and I'll keep the kids here and just liquidate all of our assets, and then you come back to Iran. Well, guess what? A lot of the men out there would convince their wives to do that, and then not let them back into Iran. So then they would be locked out. They couldn't see their families anymore. And you hear a lot of these stories. It's actually very, very sad what these men, what men are capable of doing. If the women did not obey them and did not want to, live this lifestyle. Some women do cater into it because they don't want to be apart from their children. See, and I would be the bad one, because I would be like, yeah, we're not doing that. I'm just not going to do it. So, anyways, so he convinces Betty to go to Iran. They go to Iran, and the first 2 weeks are amazing. They get to go around and see everything. The family is wonderful. And on the last day, the day before that they're supposed to fly back into the United States, Moody ends up telling Betty that they're not going back to the United States. And she expresses her anger to him that she was tricked. She couldn't believe that he would do something like that. And, he expressed to her, this is his culture. It's his way. She's shown, if she doesn't obey, what he says to her, that she'll never see her daughter, Matab. So she, for the first couple of weeks, she does explain this. She didn't want to eat. She was fighting with the family. And it finally started to click in with her that if she was going to try and escape, she would need to start getting along with the family, become nice. She wasn't allowed to go out by herself. She wasn't allowed to use the phone. She was always being watched, so that way she wouldn't escape. Finally, after some time, now mind you, this is 18 months where she has to start building up some type of plan to get out of there and get her and her daughter safely back into the United States. And it just so happened, and this is where I always say that when you're good to people, it always comes back. It always comes back. And, it's kind of sad with what is going on right now, especially after the whole Bad Bunny um, situation. People are still upset about this. And, people are getting canceled right now for expressing their feelings. And listen, nobody's saying that your opinion is not validated, but you always have to also understand where other people are coming from. And racism is very, very real, and the biggest problem with this whole thing, not to kind of sidetrack, is that people made it a problem that, it was a Spanish performer. And we should never live in a time like this where this is not okay, you know? So when you're kind to other people, good things come in. And for Betty, she was very fortunate where she met a man who was in the market. He had his own business, and he was very kind to her, even though, she was not from his country. and he helped her. He helped her and funded her escape. She would find ways to get to the market, to use the phone, to call the embassy. What's sad in the movie and what actually ended up happening, again, this is based on a true story, is she was able to get to the embassy in Iran, and they told her, you have to go back to your husband. When you come to this country, you lose all your rights. And she was completely shocked. She's like, well, how am I supposed to get back into the United States? She's like, they told her, like, really, there's nothing that you can do. You would need your husband's permission to go back into the States with your daughter. But the men here have all of the power, they have all of the rights. So this gave her more of a drive to try and escape. She finally does convince her husband, Moody, to trust her enough to where they move into a different location where she wasn't being watched by the family all the time. And some of the family members took to her, and you saw it in the movie, and she was able to meet other people that were being held captive by their husband. And he would, they would explain to her, like, I was beat for many, 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 many months. She has even explained in her own documentary, and her daughter also wrote a book, by the way, that Moody would beat her and abuse her constantly for over a period of time until, she was really obedient, and is the word I would say and use, because she had no choice. She had to fight for her child. It became so abusive that she had no choice but to go into this direction, because she didn't want her daughter to see this either. One day, it's funny how things work out. One day, she gets a message that her father is dying. And she knew that if she can go back to the States, Moody would never let her back into Iran. So she had to figure out a way to get the escape going. It was not ready. It was not prepared. A lot of people start scrambling on her escape. But the day before she was supposed to fly out back to the United States, because Moody had said, no, you're going to go back to the States. You're going to liquidate everything, and then you can come back to Iran. But she knew that Moody was never going to let that happen. And she could not take that chance to leave Matab, her daughter, with him, and then that happens. She was already tricked. So I would never do the same thing if that was my daughter. I would be like, no, no, that is not happening. Look at what happened the first time. Wrong. So we're not going to be doing that. So the day before that, she convinces the family to tell them, you know what, I got to go to the market. I just got to pick up some stuff to bring back to the States for my dad, things that he would love. Sweet talked the family. And of course, the family was like, of course, sure, go ahead. We don't want you to go back to the States without anything. So she takes Matab, and this is the great escape here. So now she goes back. She finds the guy that's been helping her in the store, and he explains to her. He's like, "Okay, this is the plan. This is what you got to tell him to meet you here. Because we need enough time while he's in this location to get you across. I don't know what's gonna happen." He got her fake passports. He got everything for her. There now, now in the movie they do show that she's going through the desert and everything, but it really wasn't the desert. There was a lot of snow on the floor, and it was very cold. She had to travel by camel. Yeah, this is real. But soon enough, she's able to get back into the United States and then tell her story. And she always says throughout her documentary, if it wasn't for her daughter giving her strength every single day, she doesn't know how she would have been able to do it. You know, a lot of women that do escape don't, the risk of them getting caught is actually much higher. And she was very, very fortunate that this plan came together. So, you know, it's a very, very sad story with a happy ending to it. Again, if you would like to see this movie is on Prime and it's on YouTube. And then there's five other ways that you can watch it when you look it up. It's called, again, Not Without My Daughter. Very, very great movie. I would say February 9th, 1986 was the best day of her life. You know, being back in the States, I can only imagine, you know, how crazy her husband was. Like, this bitch, how dare you? You know, I can only imagine in my head, like, what he was saying and what he was doing and how the family was upset. And it was like, you know, but the bravery, the things that women do for their children, um, is undescribable, is the word I would love to use, because women at any given moment will always protect their, you know, they're like mama cubs, they'll protect their babies. And this is such a phenomenal movie. It's, again, one of my favorite movies. I love Sally Fields. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Bye.